Hello and welcome to Podtoid. We are your host. I am CJ.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 403. We have a good show for you today, though we are a little shorthanded. Dan is not here right now. He may be having some technical issues due to weather. And Chris Moyes is not with us today. I think he told me he was going to spend the weekend drinking the sweet, nourishing tears of Theresa May. So I hope he has fun doing that. Exactly. But the show will go on. We're going to talk about Mario Kart Tour, Rage 2, loot boxes, and some more. But first, I want to start the show off with two stories about stupid people. You know, America is a nation full of dummies, and thanks to the internet, it's a lot easier to find them. So we're going to start with one out of Louisiana, and Occams, this is the one you sent me, where two men are dead after they tried to do some amateur stunt devil work. According to NBC News, Louisiana State Police responded to a call of a single-car crash around 2 a.m. at Black Bayou Bridge. The bridge had been closed at the time to allow boats to pass, which means that the bridge had actually been raised. That little fact didn't stop two men from Texas from wanting to get to the other side. According to witnesses, the passenger of the car got out and raised the gate arm of the bridge. The driver then backed up the car, put the pedal to the metal, and tried to jump it like they were the fucking Dukes of Hazzard. I believe we have an audio of what that might have sounded like.
With the bridge gone and the airport, unfortunately, on the other side of the bridge, a number of citizens are attempting to jump the gorge with their cars. It's a silent testament to the never give up and never think things out spirit of our citizens.
Yeah, never think things out is clearly what was going on here. Unfortunately, the car didn't clear the gap and sank to the bottom of the river. I gotta ask, do you guys think that this was a song going through their head when they were planning this?
I could definitely see that. It's tough because on one part of me, it's like, oh man, these two people died and they had families and people who cared for them. There's the other part of me that's just cackling, just like a madman. And just really glad that they're not in the gene pool anymore. And maybe it was drugs. I could see. I've been drunk enough and thought I can climb that tree. And it didn't work out well. So I don't know. But it's still, all I hear is the gentle sound of me cackling like a madman.
I mean, I've seen the bridges when they've been drawn up like that, and I've always thought, I wonder if I could jump to the other side. I've obviously never, put that into practice, but I mean, most of the bridges that I've seen, it's just like the ramp is such at a near 90-degree angle that it's near impossible to do. So I wonder just what this bridge looked like with it raised to like even put the idea in their head that, hey, maybe I can make it across. Oh, them Duke boys. Our second idiot is from my home state of Washington. 27-year-old Cameron Wilson was arrested by police after a series of unfortunate events. According to the Wenatchee World News Report, Wilson was minding his own business and carrying his gun, like you do, when the gun accidentally discharged directly into his testicle. Wilson was then taken to the hospital with the bullet still lodged in his thigh, and as doctors were operating on him, a balloon of marijuana fell out of his ass. Now, I should point out recreational weed is legal in the state of Washington, so there's no reason for him to have drugs up his ass other than he didn't know it's legal or he absolutely loves it. His troubles did not end there. When police arrived, they found meth in his car and arrested him for being a felon in possession of a firearm and for possession of meth. When they got him to jail and strip searched him, another bag of marijuana fell out of his ass, and he was additionally charged with possessing a controlled substance in a correctional facility. That is the aristocrats of a drug arrest right there.
But why would you put the marijuana up your ass and not the meth?
I guess if the balloon to the marijuana breaks, it's not going to completely wreck your shit up, whereas the meth probably would. But that's still a good question.
I don't even know where to begin. But it seems like a disproportionate amount of these stories seem to involve somebody's weapon discharging into some sort of part of their genitalia. Just like, don't carry a gun. I know this is easy for me to say as somebody who's not from your side of the world, but don't carry a gun. And if you do, put the safety on, please.
All I'm saying is this is America where we have the right to shoot ourselves in the nuts.
That is a constitutional right. I am glad it does not exist over here. Not that I have any nuts to shoot, but...
Well, you'd hate to have one end up in your ovary.
That's, how you never hear like a woman got shot in the vagina, like her gun went off, and I'm just want to point that out. Just want to say.
Yeah, no.
Fair point.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started talking about games. I'm going to go ahead and start us off. This week, Nintendo finally had a closed beta for its upcoming Mario Kart Tour, which is the mobile free-to-play version of its Mario Kart franchise. I was lucky enough to be a part of the beta, and I've been playing it for the past 4 days. I have a write-up going up on Sunday about it, and it's weird. When I wrote about this game being announced last year, I went back and looked at the little short news blip I did on it, and I was so full of hope. I was so excited about it, like, oh yeah, Mario Kart on mobile. And then I look at what I wrote for my hands-on in it, and I just become bitter to the idea. And I think a year and a half or so of playing mobile games and just having everything be just gotcha bullshit nonsense has really just taken its toll on me, and I just no longer can care for any of these types of games. And unfortunately, Mario Kart Tour falls right in there. There are a lot of pay-to-win possibilities with this game. The way it's set up is that you unlock a cup, and each cup has 4 different races and then a challenge race. And each race is on a different track. Right now, they only have what seems to be tracks from the Mario Kart 7 3DS game in there, although there could be some that just weren't in there. But they come from the entire series up to that point. So there are SNES tracks, there are Game Boy Advance tracks, N64 tracks, etc., all the way up to Mario Kart 7. I don't think there are Mario Kart Wii tracks in there. Besides the point. And each track that you race on will have a driver, a kart, and a glider that it has preference of. So like Toad Circuit will like Toad better than any other racers. And if you have Toad, if you unlocked him through the summons that you do in the game, you will get an item boost. Or you will be able to carry more items than other racers, unless they're also racing Toad. If you have the cart that it likes, you'll go faster than other cars, unless they also have that cart. If you have the glider it likes, you will you'll have better luck with the different weapons you can get from the item boxes. That right there makes it out to be that you really can't be guaranteed that your skills will be enough to get first place unless you have the cart, the driver, and the glider that the track likes. And this is different for basically every single track. So just because you have Toad and he's great in one track doesn't mean he's going to be great on like Daisy Hills or something like that. He could suck there. And so with the summons that you do, that you pay, that in the final version you'll pay money to unlock, although you could also earn them in game, and for the beta you can't pay anything right now. You can level up those racers to make them even more powerful. So, like, you can, if you get multiples of the cart, of like a cart that a track really likes, that cart will get faster and faster the further you level it up. If you get multiples of the glider, it will give you your items faster and faster than other carts, and also you'll get even better luck on the draw of the items going forward. Your driver will basically only get you more points, which doesn't really factor into the taking first place or not. But when it comes to the cart and the glider, it really is pay to win. People who have more emeralds, who either buy them or unlock them through gameplay, to unlock more duplicates of these cars and these gliders to level them up, are going to have an advantage. And depending on how much they spend, they could have a very unfair advantage. Some of these rare carts and rare gliders will give you a very big boost compared to a standard cart or glider. Right now, if it isn't evident by what I'm saying now, I'm not really sold on this game. There are no original tracks in it. Everything is just from previous Mario Kart games. There are some interesting ideas with what it does with weapons. But as it stands right now, it just kind of feels scummy. And I hate to say that about Mario Kart because it is one of my favorite franchises. I've been playing it since the start, but this isn't what I thought the mobile version of Mario Kart would be, and it's absolutely not one that I like at all.
I mean, when it comes to pay to win as scummy, I think in a sense, the mobile market, even in Japan, I've heard is massive now. So I understand why Nintendo are doing it, even though they're a huge company and they can earn loads of money off the Switch version of Mario Kart. But at the same time, they could have implemented pay to win with Mario Kart in a way which is not dependent on your, doesn't influence your success as much in the game. Like, I think with something like Mario Kart on mobile, enough people would want to buy accessory packs that they could make money that way. I don't see how they would have to make it so that you're buying advantages. Well, that's pay to win, isn't it? Like pay to accessorize, I'd say, is probably more fair in this scenario. And I think enough people would pay for pure accessories, to be honest. I don't feel like Nintendo necessarily had to do it that way around.
And I wish I could compare it to other mobile kart racers, but I mean, they've pretty much all sucked. While I was experiencing connection issues on the first day, I decided to download Garfield Kart, and boy, could not delete that off my phone fast enough.
Question: the Garfield kart racer, can you play as I forget what her name is, the sexy cat in Garfield?
Arlene?
Yes.
You know what? I didn't have it on my phone long enough to find out.
I'd have to play as the Dark Horse Nermal.
Yeah.
And then add in a U.S. Acres add-on.
I was always confused by Nermal in the cartoon because it was clearly voiced by a girl, but it's a boy character, so that always threw me off.
Well, it's like finding out Bart Simpson is voiced by a woman.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, Mario Kart Tour. Not really a fan of it. Let's move on. Occams, you have been still diving into Rage 2, and I see Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah. I beat Rage 2. Sure.
Woo!
That was a game. That was a game I played and beat it, and it's whatever. I've never in my life. That's not true. That's hyperbole. But it was such a game designed by committee that it just everything was like, oh God. I feel bad for the people who made it. And what I mean by that is that it's a fine game, but it's just so it's just nothing to it. It felt so. I don't know. You ever watch those singing competition shows and everyone is so enthused, everyone's like, oh, it's great, blah, or really upset, or really, but a producer is telling them okay, you need to really show what you're feeling right now. Maybe you're at a 4, we need you at a 9 because this is television. That's what the game felt like the whole fucking time. So it was boring. I mean, it's fine, but I don't know. I think my days of zany post-apocalyptic shooter stuff's kind of coming to an end because it's just kind of I was happy to delete it off my PlayStation when I was done. I was like, yeah. So if you get it for $20 a year from now, I think you'll be mildly entertained.
Let's be honest, less than a year.
Yeah, that's very fair, very fair. But in preparation for Shadowbringers, I think that's the expansion title coming out, I started playing Final Fantasy XIV again. Oh God, so I've never done heroin, right? I had a lost summer where I was like, I'll take ecstasy, and that was too much fun, so I didn't do it too often. And you do whatever you do, and tried various and sundry substances, which I will not endorse anywhere. But it's like coming home. You just the world and the characters and everything. It's so good. And the storyline for Final Fantasy, the sad thing is that I think a lot of people will never experience it because it's a massive multiplayer game. But the main quest story is so fucking good. And just the characters are so well developed, and there's just weird side missions you can do with a guy, what's his name, Hildebrand, which is this investigator who's just nuts. It's so weird. It's all so good. The aesthetics are there. They have the design, the visual design, their visual Bible they've created. Because I have the art books for every time the new expansion comes out. they put out a new art book, and I get it because it's like 300 pages of just beautiful art down to like the furniture details, which I love. It is just so good. It's like, yeah, it's kind of my little digital heroine, which is really nice. I'm excited for Shadowbringers, and I guess that's what I'll be playing for the next 2 months. So cool.
So that to you is it's worth the subscription price.
Oh God, yeah, easily. Because see, what I do is, I know people who play all year, and I don't keep up that long, but an expansion comes out, that's probably 40 or 50 hours just on the main quest. Because there's, a lot of stuff you go do, you unlock dungeons, you do all this stuff. But then there's like side things you can go find, new areas to discover. The music is fantastic. The boss fights are great. It doesn't really, the in-game stuff is where you have to you grind for like tomes, which is their currency then you trade in to get gear. That's usually when I drop out. Once I get to that point, I'll do that for about a week. Then I'm like, yeah, I'm good. But every time a new patch comes out, they add more content. They do a lot of stuff. I just got a quest to tie into Monster Hunter, which is a game I played and relatively enjoyed. But fuck yeah, I want to see like Monster Hunter World hanging out in Final Fantasy XIV. I think it's like 12 or 15 a month. Well worth it. Even if you only play a couple hours a week, I think there's just a lot of fun to be had. The Yoshi P, the producer of the game, and his crew have they've really made something special with it. So highly recommend it. I'm playing a ninja. I'm really looking forward to the Gunbreaker class, and you can play as I think the Rabbit Chicks from 12. Fran, shout out to Fran, one of the few video game crushes I've ever had. And I think a lot of that was to her accent, though. And Balthier too. I had a crush on him, but that's a whole nother story. And it's a wonderful game. Wonderful game. Well, I highly recommend it, especially if you're like me and you mostly play on consoles. It's beautiful on the PlayStation.
What I find interesting is that people who played Final Fantasy XIII had a lot to complain about. People who played Final Fantasy XV had a lot to complain about. And a lot of people played both of those games, and I don't think nearly as much people have played Final Fantasy XIV, and yet I haven't heard a bad thing about it. Everyone seems to love this game.
Yeah, I mean, it gets it right on so many levels. And there's that documentary, I forget the folks who put it out, but the hour and a half or 2 hours talking about like the history of the game and how it started out as a complete fucking disaster, and then they relaunched into Realm Reborn, and it became this amazing thing. It's a fun watch just to see watch such a big company fail hard and then learn from their mistakes. But to really see where the game was versus where it is now. Yeah, it's so good. And to be fair, 15 was a great game. It has its issues, but it's like just riding around with your friends in that beautiful open world. It's a good fucking game.
Yeah, and I for one, really, I've not quite finished it yet, but the first 20 hours of Final Fantasy 13 that I've played is pretty damn good. I know that's a bit of a controversial thing to say, but I like Final Fantasy 13.
I do too. I like it quite a bit. It came out at a time, when people, they just, Final Fantasy is one of those series where you change something and everyone gets a little weird. I'm old enough to where I've played all of them, usually right when they came out, and it's when they change up the formula, people they don't like change, and I can appreciate that on some levels. But yeah, it's a fine game. None of them are perfect except Final Fantasy VI, which is the greatest game ever made. But it's a fine game. It really is.
I think if your first Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy VII, you'd be probably more prone to not welcome the changes that are made with each iteration. My first Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy II, which technically was Final Fantasy IV. So I went from 4 to 6. Then to 9, and then I went back to 7. So I've seen how the game has changed before 7 came out, and to see the iterations of the combat system, and how the story has evolved and everything. So
I get what you're saying. I think if 7 or 9, or even the 8's in there somewhere, but yeah. Whose favorite is 8? Y'all are weird. Don't do that. That's like being the Final Fantasy equivalent of the guy who says, "Oh, I don't own a television." Don't be that guy. Okay. But if 7 was your first Final Fantasy, that's a tough one because that game was it's so ingrained in like the video game pop culture zeitgeist.
Mhm.
It's a tough one to get over. Like, yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. 4, 2, whatever was my first game. I went back and played 1. 6 came out, all this stuff. So we have a little more context. But as people get, as our generation ages out, these people whose first Final Fantasy game was probably 15, which is a surreal thought to me to have to go back and kind of see where it all came from.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one that I finished was 15.
Yeah.
I tried 10 and 12. That were the first ones I gave a good go at, and I didn't care for either of them. And then I tried 13 for the second time, and then I was like, "Wow, this is really good. Why are people complaining?" And it's probably because I hadn't played any of the earlier ones.
Yeah, well, that's the people who are complaining had the decades of Final Fantasy experience, and it wasn't what they wanted it to be. A long time ago, I accepted the fact that Final Fantasy, each game is a chance to reinvent itself, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Lady Gaga of video games, and I'm there for it. I support it. I want to see what it does because even when it doesn't work, it from the ashes rises something new and beautiful. And that's how we get like 14 and how we get 15. There's some really fucking cool moments. The summons in 15, fucking some of the coolest shit I've ever seen in a game. Never felt so powerful in my life in a video game.
All right, Charlotte, you have been playing some Overcooked.
Yep. I mean, it's on PS Plus, so why not?
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity to play it co-op yesterday, and wow, we looked up after 3 hours and we thought like half an hour had gone by. It is so good. So good. I don't know why I didn't play Overcooked earlier. It's phenomenal. Like, I don't think I've heard that playing Overcooked, you can play it on your own, but when you get to the later levels, it becomes impossible unless you've got at least one co-op person sat next to you. I can't imagine playing it on my own, but playing it with another person, it's just so much fun because you just have to be talking constantly towards the later levels to figure out who's doing what and make sure you're coordinating everything properly. And there was definitely moments where we were just like jokingly like shouting at each other because somebody did something stupid and just like, why did you do that? What were you thinking? Yeah, and it gets like, most people I think listening to this will have had some experience with Overcooked, but when it gets to the levels where things are on fire or you're in the dark, it's like you literally just shouting at the TV that the developers have a screw loose because you're just like, how could they do this? But yeah, we like the good thing about Overcooked as well is that it encourages you. You have to get a certain number of stars to progress towards the like throughout, but as it gets later on, you start finding out that you don't have enough stars as you go from stage to stage. So you have to go back and better your scores on earlier levels in order to progress to the later ones, which I think is a really great idea because replaying those levels, it's crazy how fast you get better at them. Like literally just going back and playing it a second time, you can go from 1 star to 3 stars pretty easily. It's the opposite of having a steep learning curve. It encourages you to learn and it's really easy to get better. So it's just so much fun. With 4 people instead of just 2 people, I would think that it would be even better. So I think that it's a definite hit for a party or a small gathering.
Yeah, I played Overcooked 2 at E3 last year with 2 other people, and it was a blast. We had so much fun, and it's like you said, you have to keep talking to one another, otherwise you're not really gonna be on the same page. So I actually never got around to playing the original Overcooked, but I have Overcooked 2 sitting on my shelf, still in its shrink wrap, because I just apparently don't have any more time to play games. But yeah, Occams, have you had the pleasure of playing either Overcooked?
I did. I had a friend of mine who brought his Switch over to show it to me, and we played Overcooked together, and it made me hungry and stressed. I was just like making hamburgers, like, God fucking damn it, put the lettuce on first. It was fun though. It was I could definitely see like a party of 4 people, a bit of libation should you choose to partake. It could definitely be a good time.
I recommended it to my friend and his girlfriend to play. and they ended up not doing it. And now I'm kind of glad that they didn't, because they might have been just fighting with each other over what to do, and they would have never got engaged, like I found out this week. So I almost ruined their relationship by recommending Overcooked, and thank God they didn't listen to me.
I don't think so. I think Overcooked is like anything. I think if you've got a strong relationship, it will dissolve into just witty banter at each other. But if you've got a rocky relationship, it will tear those cracks right up into like gaping fissures. So you wouldn't have you'd have made them realize if things were not working out. You'd have done them a service, I think.
Although if I really wanted them to break up, I would have recommended them playing Mario Party. I mean, that would do the trick.
Mm.
We got a real sliding door situation here.
Oh, that's a nice 90s throwback you got there, Occams.
Thank you.
You are listening to Podtoid.
That is it for games, but we still have some headlines to cover. It is time for the news. This was an interesting assortment of news this week. We found out that Dead Island 2 is still alive. Travis Strikes Again is being ported to PS4 and Steam. And Star Ocean First Departure is fighting its way to Switch and PS4 this year. You know, I went back and watched the reveal trailer to Dead Island 2, and it's still one of my favorite trailers ever. Do y'all remember that one?
Is that the Joker?
The one with the little girl?
No, that's the first one.
Okay.
The little girl in the I think she's in the hotel room.
Mm.
Yeah, the second one is with the jogger. Yeah. I just love it. I love how funny that is. But obviously the biggest story of the week in gaming is all about politics. After saying he would a few weeks ago, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley revealed his anti-loot box legislation, and it's kind of a doozy. The wording of the bill can be vague in parts. However, essentially, it will ban loot boxes and pay-to-win schemes in games aimed at minors or that developers know minors play. The bill plays fast and loose with what it determines is a game aimed at minors. It includes games that feature celebrities who appeal to minors, the age of the character models in the game, advertising materials and where the game is advertised, the subject matter of the game, and more. I mean, basically, the only way for your game not to be considered something for minors is for it to be like a game with no voice actors, with characters that are over 100 years old, and you only advertise it on Fox News and during reruns of Matlock. Also, just to be safe, it has to be a genre that kids don't like. So, I don't know, Twine adventure game?
Walking Sims.
There is a lot of talk about the bill. I'm not a fan of loot boxes and designing games around pay-to-win mechanics, as I just kind of explained with Mario Kart Tour, but I find it weird that the bill is being sold under the guise of, quote, protecting minors, because it's going to affect everyone, from kids who just like, playing on their parents' phone, to adults who, I don't know, spend a few bucks a week on Candy Crush and don't mind it. And I think the problem is that it's the term minor covers an incredibly diverse range of ages, and it's impossible for a video game company to advertise something that doesn't appeal to a minor. Because like a 17-year-old is technically a minor, and you would never advertise to a 4-year-old the same way you do to a 17-year-old. Because if you did, Sesame Street commercials would look way different. But there's no way that you can advertise to like an 18-year-old that is not also being advertised to a 17-year-old, right? Like that's impossible.
It's just think of the children, like feel good legislation. It's bullshit is what it is. It's I agree. I don't mind like the cosmetic stuff. I know it's a slippery slope. I kind of don't care as much about these things. Mm-hmm. But when you start like trying to, it's the same thing like defining pornography. I can't tell you the definition, but I know when I see it. It's the same thing with that. Like, what's a loot box? What's a minor? It's all so vague that you can just include everything, and that's fucked up. And it's. I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think it's one of those things where it's like, well, I want to protect the kids, and you puff your chest up a little bit. But it's fucking pointless. I think if you want to really get into if you want to really like stop loot boxes from affecting people the way they are or are not, I honestly don't know. I haven't looked at any numbers or anything, but this isn't how you do it. You don't just this broad sweeping shit. You go, no, this is shitty. This type of thing is shitty. Don't do that.
And you also have the problem with, like, let's say this somehow miraculously does go through, like, what is it going to be replaced with? Because it's not like they're just going to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to lose those billions of dollars of revenue, because it is literally billions. I'm just, I'm not going to have that anymore. They're obviously going to replace it with something. And whether that is, subscription models or higher price games or something, that money is not just going to disappear. They're going to try and get it in other ways, in ways that this bill would not cover.
Yeah, just at the end of the day, let's say it does pass. It's just going to affect the people buying video games. The guy who put this legislation out, I believe I read he doesn't play video games.
That is correct.
So that's definitely the fucking perfect person to try to legislate video games. You asshole.
Jack Thompson.
Yeah. It's like the old white man trying to legislate abortion rights. That's a whole nother subject, but it's essentially the same principle. It's you thinking to the kids, it doesn't really affect us, but we're going to tell you what to do. It just annoys me so much. I could ramble, so just feel free to cut me off.
Okay.
I mean, isn't it? I don't know a lot about this topic, but isn't it already loot boxes are already banned in the Netherlands, I think, or in some smaller European country they've
Belgium.
been banned. Okay, yeah. I'm largely sympathetic to the idea of banning anything that can be described as gambling. But my issue is that, for example, when I watch the football occasionally, like soccer, okay, for you guys, soccer, whatever. That gets under my skin. It's football. Yeah, there's always these adverts, like it's constantly sponsored by betting companies, and there's betting shops everywhere, and so for me it's like, okay, you can ban loot boxes, but there's a bigger problem with the way that the society treats gambling. So my follow-on question would be, this is Missouri, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is gambling, like, you can play the lottery there, right? You can, go to a betting shop maybe. I don't know what the law is, but if it's not universally gambling is bad, then it's like this doesn't really fit in with the rest of policy on gambling, really.
Oh yeah, like in the States, I don't think we have betting shops. Are those like bookies, places you can place bets?
Yeah.
Okay, there are, I think, various and sundry ways to do that here, but I don't know. And then CJ, please feel free to correct me or add in your own experience. But to my knowledge, we don't have any place specifically like that.
Well, we do. First of all,
I guess racetracks.
Yeah, I was going to say there are racetracks, and then there are also kind of like little betting parlors. At least I know that there were in the 90s, because there were several Seinfeld episodes based around them. That you go and you're not necessarily at the track, but you can bet on the horses that are racing. So we do have ways to gamble, and actually, the state of Missouri does have a lottery, so they do have state-sponsored gambling there.
I'm just going to keep sarcastically saying, "Think of the children."
Yeah,
because it's all it is.
Oh, and I mean, you mentioned the adverts during football. Of betting. We have that here too with our football, American football, that it's like DraftKings. Like that's the big thing right now, is you go and you do fantasy football drafting that's all based around gambling. I still think that's a thing. I know that was like $1 billion industry 2 years ago, but I think they were going to start cracking down on it. I'm not sure if they ever did, but like you're right.
Yeah.
I mean,
kids
if you
can watch that.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to protect kids from gambling, you can't just target video games. You have to target all the different ways that we encourage kids to gamble, like during the NFL when you see a DraftKings commercial.
But it's not. But video games are an easy target. Like in video games, it's an easy punching bag to say they're evil, because they still the echoes of fucking Night Trap and Doom and Columbine and all that bullshit. So it's easy, and then you can just show a clip from Mortal Kombat, say this is what our children are playing right now, burr, and then you say we need to legislate this shit.
Yeah, and actually, one of the co-sponsors on the bill, Senator Blumenthal, when he was I think he was a state attorney general, he wrote, I can't remember what it's called, but he wrote to the Supreme Court in favor of California's ban on violent video games. Remember when that went to the Supreme Court about 9 or 10 years ago? Like, he was for California being able to ban violent video games, and he's now for banning of loot boxes. So, I mean, I don't really like anyone who is sponsoring this bill right now, but I kind of can't blame them with, the bullshit nonsense that game companies have put into their games in terms of loot boxes and pay to win, especially when it appears in full price games. That is just when it is absolutely fundamentally unacceptable. Moving on, our second story of the day is actually a bit of movie news. The Sonic the Hedgehog movie has been delayed into next year to give the visual effects team more time to drastically remake Sonic, something I'm sure will be expensive and probably not recoupable in the long run. And I guess to avoid situations like that in the future, Sony announced PlayStation Productions this week, which is a new production company that will adapt PlayStation franchises for film and television. Detective Pikachu has proven that you can make a decent film out of a video game, but not every game studio that makes movies has been able to translate the formula to film. Case in point, Ubisoft Motion Pictures and its disastrous Assassin's Creed film, or Blizzard Entertainment and Warcraft, which I know people keep telling me, oh no, that's actually a good film, and then I have to question their sanity.
It's hot garbage.
It's awful. Those video game aesthetics do not work in real life. Oof.
No, not at all.
That said, I'd be willing to see what, if anything, comes out of this new production company. And I will say I would love for Sony to make The Order 1886 into a streaming series. Like, that for me would be must-watch television.
See, I'm mentally giving you a golf clap right now. That is exactly. Now for me, you said Order 1886. I was thinking Last of Us, but the exact same thing, streaming series. It could even be like an anthology series of stories set in that world.
Yeah.
I would love that, especially like as horrible as the clickers were in the game. I just imagine a combination CG practical effect. But like the tension you could create having to deal with those things, it'd be great. It'd be so much fun. Now, follow-up question. What are some of the other things that Sony has they could turn into video games? Because like God of War,
turn into movies,
Crash, Bandicoot?
Uncharted.
Uncharted, yeah.
Remember a few years ago, and Chris Carter had this in his story, there was that Sly Cooper animated film that was supposed to be made. That could be one. I wouldn't mind that. Yeah. An Ape Escape children's animated series might be fun to watch.
That would be great.
Especially for that couple monkeys that you devastate, Charlotte.
Oh yeah. just a backstory of those monkeys whose lives I tore apart. Yeah. But I don't think Sly Cooper would like that. A Sly Cooper game hasn't come out for about 6 years now, right?
Right.
I don't think that's very likely.
I know. I'm trying to think of Sony franchises. I mean, that we've named all the big ones: God of War, Uncharted, Last of Us, etc. And there's no way in hell I'd watch a Gran Turismo movie. Just like I didn't watch a what was it, Need for Speed movie.
Look, we all saw Days of Thunder, and we got the cars from the God, where do they sell those? Like McDonald's or something? It's the only racing movie you need. I'm feeling very, very old today, by the way.
Yeah. God, what other?
I bet they have some like stuff that's just like, like the C or D level stuff that hasn't been touched in a while. They could really pull up and make new.
Jumping Flash. Let's get a Jumping Flash movie.
Hell yeah. That was I rented. So when the PlayStation came out, I rented one from Blockbuster. And shout out to my dad for putting that $250 deposit down on his credit card. And I rented Jumping Flash. That was the trippiest fucking game. It was so much fun. It was just like this weird sense of verticality in a game that I hadn't experienced before. Of course, I didn't have a memory card, so what you gonna do? But
I think a movie that probably sounds better on paper than it would be in practice is Twisted Metal. Like that could be some very cool car stunts on screen, but there's no way that actually make for a good movie.
Not at all. Because what happens is it gets made and it's like a Death Race Part 4 direct to DVD kind of thing. It doesn't. Yeah.
All right. So for our last story, I'm sorry to report to you guys that the Oya is going to be killed off. I'm just going to hold for
Oh, no.
brains. Yeah, I know. It's so sad that is going to die another death next month. Razer, which bought the Ouya for some goddamn reason, announced this week it is shutting down the Ouya store for good on June 25th. The Ouya store apparently hasn't had a new game since December 2017, and hopefully all the good games on it have been ported to another system by now.
I'm stabbing in the dark here, but the people who still care about the Ouya are probably people who have modded it anyway, right? I don't know the modding capabilities of it, but if that's the case, then they're not going to care about the store shutting down. They'll have some other sort of solution, I'm guessing.
So a lot of the best-selling things on the store are emulators to other consoles. So I assume that anyone who cares about an Ouya has already downloaded their SNES, their Dreamcast, their NES emulators. And by the way, just brazenly on the store, like not even something you have to secretly find or it's named something else, but it's actually an emulator. No, it's just like NES emulator downloaded today. Like, oh. How do they not get sued out of existence? But then I remember it's the Ouya. They don't have any money.
That's like going on the iTunes or the iStore and you look at games and you type in something random and it just clearly the game's popped up to be like an SEO hit where it's like Pokemon, sex, free download, Megacorp, Kardashian, fuckbot or something, and it's like awesome.
It's like those old YouTube videos aimed at kids that it's Spider-Man pregnant Elsa. Like just those 4 words appeared on about 9 million different videos aimed at children.
I really wish that was my handle on Destructoid now.
So the Ouya is dead, but if you want to own a gaming device that only a handful of people will ever pick up, the company Panic announced this week it is releasing the Playdate, which is a handheld gaming device that looks like the widescreen version of the Pokemon Yellow Special Edition Game Boy, but with a crank on its side. The crank is actually a control method for the device, and the first game shown for it, Crankin's Time Travel Adventures, seems to use it exclusively. The Playdate will feature download-only games, and it seems there is a select few developers making games for it. The first season of games, which is included in the purchase price of the unit, will include games by Bennett Foddy, Zach Gage, and Sean Inman. The device will cost $149, and it is not being made as a mass market product, so expect this to be like a specialty device, a curio that is meant to distract you from your regular games. A lot of people think $149 is probably too much to ask for it. I want one, but I'm also not looking at it as, oh, this is going to be my next 3DS or this is going to replace anything I own in gaming. But I'm planning on getting one because it's just, I love to see experimental games, and I feel like this is a device custom made for experimental games.
Yeah, I can dig that. I mean, people still have their Virtual Boys. It'll just be another Virtual Boy.
Except I could actually use this, unlike a Virtual Boy.
Oh, man. Charlotte, did you ever play Virtual Boy?
Sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Remind me exactly what the Virtual Boy is again. Is it the one that's supposed to be like 3D?
Yeah, it's all red.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. It's we said yeah a lot there. It's one of those things where I'm apparently having a drug day today. If you've ever had like a bad acid trip, that's kind of what it felt like, or like being trapped in like a David Lynch nightmare. It's really, it feels like that. It was such a weird thing. I remember playing it at a Blockbuster, and then of course a friend of mine who was a resident tech geek in our group of friends bought one, and just a horrific thing to play. It really was.
I mean, how many people got like staph infections from putting the face up against that rubber seal? It just looks nasty.
I try. That's why I don't play demos very much anymore. You get Best Buy, nah, these little fucking grubby peanut butter hand children.
At least when I went and tried the PlayStation VR for the controlled demo that they were doing at Best Buy, they had an employee there whose job it was to wipe down the unit after each use, because the guy who used it before me was very sweaty, very sweaty. My favorite thing about the Virtual Boy is that it came out in 1995, 1996, but it looked like what Hollywood thought computer graphics would look like in the future in 1980. Because it looked like just some like a poor man's Tron, just the fucking red on black.
It gave you such a headache too. And you'd have to like, I think one of the promo things they showed was like a kid laying on the floor with his neck up and it just, oh God, it was just the worst neck pains.
Yeah, that was the other thing. It came with a stand, and you just had to like position your body on it. I remember the people who I know who owned one, they like had a stack of books that they set the stand on so that it would actually be at their eye height, so that they could look into it without straining their neck or anything. And I'm pretty sure they only brought it out for company because they had one game, and the other game they had one game in the unit, and the other game was still in the shrink wrap. So clearly, they weren't actively playing this thing when nobody else was around.
Although, thinking about the Virtual Boy, it makes me wonder if anyone's done a Pornhub video incorporating Virtual Boy. I know, but I just literally just thought of that. Like, I wonder if anyone's done like getting, butt fucked while Virtual Boy or something. I'm gonna have to look that up later because I'm really, I would kudos to them if they did. That's bringing it home.
Just to link back to the Playdate, I think Playdate is so I think it's a bit pricey, but not obnoxiously pricey, and it's interesting enough that if we can get them over in Europe easily, I'll probably get one. But the Playdate is one of the worst names for a console I have ever heard.
Yes, it is.
And I said on Twitter, it sounds like an alternative to Ashley Madison. And then somebody with kids said to me, no, that's not what it sounds like. It sounds like the opposite. So.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard Playdate, my first thought was that thing like white people do with their kids.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what he said. I was like, I don't have kids, so that just didn't occur to me. It just sounded like some weird sex thing to me.
No, and it absolutely. But I mean, how do you think they got the kids? I mean, it's
true
through Playdates.
Yeah, Playdates. They're swingers.
Yes, exactly. It sounds like some sort of swingers thing.
Yeah.
I just watched The Ice Storm the other day, so all this talk of swingers is really resonating with me right now.
I love that movie. Fucking dour ass Sigourney Weaver whole time. Hell yeah. Was that Ang Lee, right?
That was his second or third English speaking film.
Not bad. I look at this thing. I like the idea of the crank, just because I think it's fun. Remember there's an old kind of interactive toy thing called Bop It, where it's and you would like twist it, turn it, hit it, punch it, spit on it, tell it your darkest secrets, let it inside you, whatever. It kind of reminds me of that. I think it honestly it'd be fun for fishing games because that's pretty similar to a fishing thing. I think 150 is fine, like I said, for a curiosity or something interesting, and I would bet like 20 years down the road it's going to be like this collector's item oddity thing in the same way the Virtual Boy is now.
My caveat with that is, though, and this is more of a comment on myself than on the Playdate, I do a lot of portable gaming at the minute, more than I do home console stuff, and I'm really getting into the 3DS back catalogue. But even with just stuff like playing Phoenix Wright on the subway, I feel really self-conscious. I feel like people might be, so it's sort of an internal thing. I do have this thing where I worry that people will think, oh, that's really childish playing games in public. And I feel like with the Playdate, with the little crank, there will be a higher proportion of people looking at me and thinking I'm nuts. So that does put me off a little bit.
That's fair.
But,
well, I think that the crank thing I completely understand, because if you're just like just grinding a crank really hard in public, that unless there's an organ attached to it and a monkey on a chain connected to your ankle, you do look like a weirdo asshole. But I mean, playing fucking, if I saw somebody playing Phoenix Wright in public, I would be like, hell yeah, you do you. That's awesome. If someone's going to judge you for playing a game like Phoenix Wright, they're assholes, I wouldn't worry about it. I've like sat there in my job being all professional and blah, 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 and read like Thor comics. I'm like, fuck you. I'm gonna read a Thor comic. It's fine. I have a master's degree and I'm gonna read Thor comics. Suck my dick. It's you do you.
There was every day when I ride the train home there, everyone is on their smartphones playing Match 3 Puzzlers. So it doesn't look so weird when I break out my Switch or my 3DS or on rare occasions, my Vita.
You are listening to Podtoid.
We are just about out of time for the show, but before we go, we have a community shout out.
Yeah. Community shout out. Y'all did an amazing thing with Cattoid. So many great pictures of everyone's cats and a couple dogs in there too. I'd love to see some non-cat dog pet pictures, kind of. I'm sure someone's got a bird, maybe a bat, a couple of hamsters.
Bearded dragon, please.
Do what?
Bearded dragon. I want to see those bearded dragons.
Hell yeah. Let me see that bearded dragon, girl.
That was not meant as a sexual thing. I literally think bearded dragons are the coolest.
I know, this is, unfortunately, my brain is, something's deeply wrong with me, and I make everything sexual. It's just, I'm a tough sell at Christmas. It's a real hard one to get past. But yeah, no, I loved it. I love that everyone's pets. I always love seeing photos of everyone's waking world. So shout out to everyone who posted their cat photos. Made me smile.
That is it for the show. On behalf of Occams, Charlotte, and myself, thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.